Welcome to our channel. This is Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab, and along with my husband Chris, we do thrift flips. We take unwanted, unloved, outdated thrift store finds and then we give them new life. And on our channel, we share the process with you all. Since it seems like everybody else is making spindle caddies, why not us? So Chris is going to give it a try. I found some spindles finally. He has some leftover pallet wood, some wood that we're recycling from other projects. So why not give it a try and see if they sell in our booth or not. So first up is this very unique spindle. I don't even know what these might have been used for. I got the set of 3 for $2.99 at a local thrift store. So the first thing that Chris is doing is he's matching up the length of the bottom to the length of that spindle. So I have to say, all I did was show Chris a couple pictures off of Pinterest of these spindle caddies. So I'm like, you just make them tall enough some decor can fit underneath them. Somebody can hang a towel off them if they want. So he's like, okay, I guess when it comes to these spindle caddies, I don't really think there's a wrong or a right way. You just make whatever is pleasing to your eye. So what he's doing now is he's just measuring off where he's going to angle up that top for the handle part and making sure that he's leaving it wide enough to sustain that large spindle head. He had put the bottom piece on so he could measure up where he could do his angle, so he leaves that piece flat, doesn't cut into that for the angle. And now what he's doing is measuring what the size of that spindle end is, and then drawing a line there, and then connecting the two lines from where the top piece is to the bottom where he can cut in his angle. So now he's just going back to his table saw and following his pencil line to cut that piece of wood off. And I give you all credit for if you are daring enough to use table saws. I am not there anywhere near there yet. So if he likes to do this kind of stuff, I will always let him. Now to make a matching side, he just takes that piece that he just cut and then he just traces it with the pencil and does the same thing with the table saw and cuts that angle out. So now he's got to cut these long side pieces. Gotta love pallet wood, gotta love when there's nail holes, and I love, if I could find fence post, oh my gosh, I would love it. I see y'all using it all the time, but we don't have anything like that in our area. That usually if they do, it's definitely not for free. So all he's doing now is where he marked to cut is that he's cutting it in half for his 2 side pieces. So he is being kind for me because I usually do the finishing of all these small little projects, but this was a recycled piece of wood. I don't even know. I think that maybe from my daughter's softball days, that looks like softball yellow. Maybe we were spraying some signs for the girls for their softball team. I don't know. We might have had this piece for a while. So he's being so kind and pre-sanding it before he puts it all together because I don't know if white paint is going to cover up that yellow. So now just a little tight bond glue on those sides. Get it all glued up and then a few brad nails to keep it together. So this will be a permanent, shouldn't fall apart very easy. That tight bond glue and some brads will hold this very nice. Of course, what you do to one side, you got to flip it over and do to the other side. So repeat the process of some tight bond glue, that nice wood glue, and a few brads to keep it together. Now to attach this long sides, it's the same thing. Tight bond glue, follow the seams of the wood, put the wood on, pick which side you think is the prettiest, or well, I like nail holes, so I think that's pretty, and then some more brads to securely hold it in place. Now for me, I was wondering how he was going to attach this also because it has a very round hole in the middle of it, but he's just, there again, going back to that tight bond glue. It's a great wood glue, wood to wood glue, and so he's just gluing the edges of that and then going to clamp it and let it do what glue does and glue 2 things together, keeping it clamped, and we're going to let this be clamped overnight. And a few little brad nails to make sure that it's held in place. And then we flipped it over to the other side. He has that clamp still there nice and tight. Had to hammer it a little bit to make sure that it stays level, but as you see, it will be a nice secure fit, and then once he gets it where he needs it to be, he'll shoot a couple more brads in there. Now his next one's going to be a much smaller box. This was a little bit of spindle. These are made from a gentleman that turns these kind of things that we get a lot of our legs for our risers at. So why not support him? Because I never could come across a crib, a chair, anything that had these kind of spindles. So one day when we were looking for riser feet, I was like, oh, Chris, he has spindles. I was so excited. I'm not sure if Chris was excited to have to make these, but I was. So he's doing the same thing he did for the other box as he's matching up that spindle cut, that bottom piece, to what the spindle length is. But he has to keep where that dowel part of that spindle is from his bottom cut. So when it came to making these spindle boxes, I told Chris I truly trusted. I showed him the pictures that I had the idea. I'm still always amazed with that he is willing to do my visions. So he's just using the pieces and parts of pallet wood that have been left over. You know, it's hard to burn any type of wood. So for this little box, he's just doing some slats for the front of the long pieces that are going to tie it together instead of making one solid front. Why not make it a little bit different? You got 3 different boxes you're going to be putting together. So why not make some slatted ones? So for this spindle one, it is much smaller than the original one that he cut first. So he's just going in, he traced what he thinks is the nice triangle for this, following down where he was going to put the slats for the front and just making a triangle for the 2 sides for that caddy. And then repeating that same process to make 2 matching sides, just centering up on that piece of wood, tracing those angles, and then cutting those angles with the table saw. Now, because this spindles had those dowel ends, he needs to pre-drill a hole. So what he's doing, he's taking those 2 pieces that he cut the triangle part and he's clamping it so it's nice and secure. And then to cut the hole, to drill the hole anyway, he matched up the drill bit that he needed to the size of what those dowels were. And now he's just cutting them both at the same time, made sure that they were nice and level so they're going all the way straight through. I was just giving the pieces a once-over sanding, making sure that there's not really any sharp edges or anything that's really rough. You still want these to be rough to distress the pieces, but you want to get anything that's really rough to the touch that might hurt somebody. So he's making one more. If you want to stay or fast forward, I don't mind. But I had 3 different types of spindles for him to try, so he's doing all 3 for the video. We're only going to be making 3. We don't know if these are something that will sell in our booth or not. And every area is different, so we didn't want to go crazy and make a whole bunch with all the spindles we had. We just wanted to make enough of one each to see how they sell. So it's all the same process for this one. The larger spindle, larger bottom, keeping out for those dowels, cutting out his angles, and then the same thing, gluing everything together nice and tight. So he has one more project that he's going to cut out for me. I had thrifted this wire basket. I thought, well, it's a nice wire basket. I love the patina of it. I love the color of it. But I thought it would be kind of fun. They're really getting into making risers for baskets. So I asked him if he could come up with some kind of just a simple riser to bring this basket off the floor. So using another piece of recycled wood, first he just is cutting the square to the size of what the bottom of that basket was. So now that he's got it more of a workable size, he's just going around the bottom base of that basket, tracing on that piece of wood to know what he needs to cut out. Now he's just using his jigsaw to go around and cut out where he had traced that pencil line. Yeah, I know that circles are not always the funnest, and there's not any easy way to cut out anything that's round. The jigsaw usually works the best. Now to smooth out those rough cuts from the jigsaw, he's just going to go over and get those sharp edges so they're nice and smooth with a sander. Now he has the top piece of the base all done. Now he's just going to be making some simple legs. When it came to the height of this, I just thought anything that you didn't have to bend over to reach down to get a blanket or extra pillow would be a nice height. So all he's doing here is taking this 2x4, deciding what length that he wanted each of the legs to be, and matching the cuts up. So now this larger piece of 2x4, he's going to be using it for the supporting pieces for these 4 legs. So he's cutting this down in half so he has a more workable piece for what the lengths that he needs. And then for these 2 pieces that he cut to even size, these are going to be the four legs. And then he's making sure that they're all the same size, trimming off anything extra that he does not need. Like I said, he's trying to make them all 4 even legs. So cutting them in half, and then taking that leftover piece and making sure that it's the same size as the first piece by running it through the table saw. Again, just as you see, it's just getting that little bit of an edge off. So I'm not sure how many people watch our channel that are kind of like Chris, where they play with woodworking. So Chris has a lot of little jigs that he makes up as he goes for each project. He has other jigs that he's made that he has permanent. So what he's doing here is he's trying to taper in the bottom of the leg. So he came up with this jig that just makes that little bevel, that little distinct feature on this bottom of this leg. So now that he's made this plus sign, this is the same size as what the base is. So he's using his Craig pocket hole, this where he pre-drills so that the screws get hidden. They countersink into the wood to hold the leg, and this base for the legs that will be attaching the legs to the top part. If this all makes sense, this is my woodworking version of, I don't make this stuff, Chris does, and I'm very happy that I try to share with you my understanding of what he is doing. Now he's going to be attaching the legs that he made. So a little bit of tight bond glue, wood to wood. Glue is always a great thing. We want our items that we sell, even if it doesn't sell. This is our first time trying something like this, to make sure that it stays together. So a little bit of the wood glue. He's going to use a clamp to hold it together so that he can drill in his screw. But of course, using a square to make sure that everything is squared up, that it's going to be staying nice and level before drilling that screw in there. So yeah, it would probably have been simple for him to, at this angle where he needed to screw the 2 pieces together, he could have just put a screw. But as you see, he has that piece of tape on the end of his drill bit. So what he's doing here is he's pre-drilling a hole, going to put a little bit of tight bond glue in it, and he's going to do a fun feature of just a little bit different of a walnut piece of wood. So we have 2 different colors of wood going on here. Yep, he could have used a screw, but why not? I am a fan also of 2 different types of wood put together. So this is just a fun little dowel to give it a little bit of decorative. So now it's time to attach that base to that top that he made. So he's just going to go in and pre-drill 4 more holes, 1 for each of the legs, and then get that screwed together. Try not to go all the way through the top piece, just enough to bind the 2 pieces of wood together. Okay, so I have these two pieces that were thrifted. One is definitely a just plain white basket. It is in great shape. And the other, of course, is a plant stand. So I thought, can I tie these two together and make them a basket that's a little bit of a riser off the floor also? So we'll see how this one turns out, but I definitely need to get that white covered up. So I'm taking it into the spray room, and I'm just using that Rust-Oleum paint and primer in flat black. So this is always one of those fun. You have to hit it at a lot of different angles to get. It seems like it would be a very easy thing to paint, but not always. So as you see, it just kind of goes right through getting the other side. So you kind of have to tip your angles to make sure that you're getting all your white covered. And then even though this is already a black piece, you can tell it's a little bit chippy. So I gave it a good cleaning, a little bit of a sanding, and now a fresh coat of the Rust-Oleum paint and primer in the black also. Now before flipping this piece over and doing the top side, I did seal this in with the polyacrylic. Sorry, I did not get video of that. I always seal my metals in. The Rust-Oleum is a wonderful paint, but you still need a top coat to seal it in. And so, yep, now I'm going in, trying to hit all those other angles, trying to get that white covered up. And then I also seal this in and then let it dry. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to go in and finish these caddies up. I just absolutely are already loving the shape of how these turning out. I know some people pre-paint these before they cut them, but that's just not the process that we did here. So I have some of this hardware that I just have one piece of. So what a perfect opportunity to get to use these hardware pieces up and to add a little something to these caddies. So as you see, I taped off that spindle area. That spindle is absolutely beautiful. I'm not going to be touching that. So I taped that off, and I'm just going in with the Rust-Oleum in that white linen color and giving these caddies a few coats. I'm going to be heavily distressing it, so I want a paint that's easily going to be sanding off. Since Chris was so kind to nicely smooth out these pieces of palette and recycled wood. So this is nice and sanded. I absolutely love the height of this base for that basket, but I'm going to be just giving the wood just a little bit of something. This is that watered down antiquing wax from Waverly. So I'm just going to be applying it. The nice thing about when you water it down, you can control a little bit on how dark if I put that straight antiquing wax, it would definitely look like a dark walnut stain on this very raw wood. So I'm using the watered down mixture. So now that is dry, now I'm on to sanding these caddies. I want to really go down and I really want to sand them a lot. That's why I chose to use the chalk paint, a little bit easier to sand. I'm just going in with my little Black & Decker sander because there's some corners that I'm going to have to get into. I'm using a 220 sandpaper and just letting the sander go to town. I want to show those nail holes, some of those nail heads that have been left behind. So now as I was sanding, this was drying. So what happens when you do a water-bound down mixture to raw wood, it actually raises the grain and leaves a texture. So before sanding this piece, I want to make sure that that Waverly antiquing wax mixture is sealed in, that if it accidentally gets watered, that there's something to repel the water. So I'm going in with a couple coats of polyacrylic in the mat. So I'm so sorry if you are new to our channel. This is just how we work. We're constantly working on something. We do a lot of different projects at the same time, and you're always constantly waiting for paint to dry. So to finish and seal this chalk paint in, I'm using the Varathane finishing wax. I find that for this very raw type of paint that I wanted to do, I'm just going to be sealing it in with just this Varathane wax. When it comes to chalk paint, you have to seal it in with something or it'll constantly be coming off. So when it came to those spindles, I did nothing to those spindles. I just love the raw wood. I love this natural color. So now I'm just going to be attaching these little handles. So I'm just measuring out where I need to be and where I need to pre-drill my holes. So as not to split the wood and make it easier to attach these are ones that the screws will come in from the inside because they're handles or poles for a drawer. So I'm just having to go all the way through the wood so that I can attach the screws from the inside of this caddy into this handle. And of course, this wasn't a space that I could get the powered drill in, that I had to use a screwdriver. So now for my next handle, the screws actually come in from the front, so I'm just doing that little pencil mark, making sure that I'm even on each side, making sure that it's staying level, and then just going in with that pencil, and then I can get these pre-drilled also. And for this one, it didn't come with the screws, so I have to go over to our hoard of screws and figure out what screws will match up. So as I'm working on those other two metal baskets, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have this very large metal basket. I did a thrift with me. I showed it to you all. It did not have a liner. I'm like, okay, I need to sew a liner, and I'm just going to share with you, I am not a seamstress. But a straight stitch is something that I think that I can accomplish. So I'm just using some of my drop cloth. I have this little bit of cording to make a tie. And so let's see if I can accomplish this. So what I did is I took the piece of drop cloth that I had on the outside of this basket. Then I close pinned it in place so that it did not move on me. And that way I knew where I was going to get to pin on the side of this. So that's what I did. I went in with some stick pins and then pinned off. I didn't want it be completely tight. It's going to be a laundry bag. So I just needed to get the general form of what the bag needed to be in its size. Then I removed the clothespins and then I pulled it very gingerly off the wire basket. And so that's all I'm doing right now is I'm just doing a straight stitch following my needles that I had put in. So I'm doing that where you start off and reverse it so you get that nice secure stitch. I know I have a lot of fabric, but I wasn't willing to cut it off quite yet. I could have, but just to play on the safe side in case I have to rip this whole stitch out, which let's pray that I don't have to do that. So I am not a fast sewer. I just go really slow. I just do the minimal of what needs to get done, and this basket needed a liner. And I know I'm probably somebody that is a professional sewer is probably having a nightmare watching me. But then again, some of you might sew like I do. So I'm just making sure, even though I pinned it, that I'm not having a bunch up, that's two flat pieces of fabric on top of each other. I don't want to have a crease where I don't want a crease. And then taking the pins out as I go and making sure that it's staying flat. And then when it comes to finishing up my stitch, the same way that I started, I do the reverse motion also. So luckily I didn't have any bunching, I didn't over sew my fabric, so I'm now cutting off the excess fabric that I don't need. Now I'm turning it right side out, so to see how my stitch turned out. So if I can do this, I know any of you guys can do this too. So now I put it back into that side, that basket. I know I have a lot of excess. I know that it is not ironed. This is a laundry bag going inside a laundry basket. So I want to have it a little bit excess. I want to make it a little bit on the sloppy side, so when you're filling that laundry bag up with your laundry, that it can expand. So for the cording, it's really just going to be a decorative, maybe tighten, tie a little bit. I do not know how to make cuts over handles, so I'm not even going to attempt to do that. But what I'm going to be doing now is rolling that seam down. But when it comes to cutting the cording, you need to put a little bit piece of tape on there so it does not unravel when you're making your cut. So then I just cut in between where the tape is. So now what I did was cut off that excess fabric, kind of guessed where I wanted the roll part over the top edge to be, and that's what I'm doing now. Now I'm making a nice little cupped package, I'm not pinning that string in. I'm keeping it to the top, and then I'm just folding that over. I know some people might actually iron that, but I have that cording in there, so I'm not going to worry about it. And drop cloth is, I find it very easy to work with, so it stays pretty tucked for me just by pinning it in and when I'm getting it sewed. So for me, this was the easiest. I just put my string so it came to one of those seam sides, pinned it in place, so and still again, I'm not pinning the string. I want that so I can pull that tight. And for me, I just did it on the seam because it was the easiest. And then I'm going back over to the sewing machine, starting just like I did before when I'm butting it right up, not sewing the cording, but doing that reverse stitch so it stays nice and tight. And then I'm eyeballing where I made that crease to keep it a nice straight stitch. So as I'm working my way down, I'm taking the pins off. I'm making sure that my outer edge of that little foot guide is staying along the outer edge so my seam is nice and straight. And then making sure that the cording is staying towards the top and not getting sewed in. Now what I'm doing here is where those two pieces of cording meet, I'm sewing in between the two pieces down that seam to make sure that they stay where they need to. So I have this reed in my hoard. You can always find everything at the thrift store. So that space right there where that plant stand is, I am hoping to weave some of that reed in there, not to make it into a basket, but just to give it a little bit of a wooden feature. From working with reed in past when my kids were in 4-H, you need to wet it down. If you just try to do it while it is dry, a lot of times it will just crack and break on you. So I'm just putting it in a bucket of water and letting it sit for 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not really sure how long you're supposed to, but that's how long I left it sit. So now I'm just working with it right out of the bucket, not quite cutting off until I know how much I need. So I'm just going to be weaving it in and out of those little spaces where I just thought it would be a nice decorative wooden feature on this to make it not so much look like it is a plant stand. Now I'm determining where my best placement over my two ends are going to meet. See how that reed cracked? That's when I remembered that I needed to wet it first when I first tried to do it. True story. So I now am cutting it a little bit long. It's better to cut it long than too short. I've already got it weaved in there. And now I'm seeing where is the best place for it to tuck on each other, and then I can cut some more excess off. It's still pretty wet, but I might have to move it around so the placement is behind one of those black metal pieces. So now I did let that dry overnight so it was completely dry. So now I am going in with that antiquing wax. I'm making it the same color as I did that other base for that basket. The nice thing about the watered down version is you can keep adding it until you get the darkness you want. This is a very dry wood, so it's going to soak it right in. And now that I have this base all sanded, like I said, that raises the wood when you wet wood like that. So you want to get that nice and smooth. So I sanded that smooth. And so now Chris actually had to bend some little brackets. We couldn't find brackets to buy. So we wanted to be able to attach these two pieces together. So I ended up having to paint those. So I'm just pre-drilling some holes. Sometimes you just have to make it up as you go, but I knew that I wanted that base to stay, and I don't have the same color of metal paint as this piece of metal is, so black it is. So I'm just pre-drilling some holes and then taking some screws and screwing this in place so that it does not move. Now for this piece, I did spray that reed with a little bit of polyacrylic spray to make sure that that was nice and sealed in also. And now I just randomly have this black wire that I had thrifted for 50 cents. It has come in handy so many times. And so I'm just taking 4 pieces on all the 4 sides and twisting it and making sure that this base is attached to this bottom. So I thank you so much for watching today's video, and what was your favorite? And did we inspire you in any way to look at thrift store finds in a new way? I thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you were part of our YouTube family, thank you so much. And if you're new to our channel and checking out the content for the first time, please consider hitting that subscription button along with the notification bell. Thanks again for watching.